It's Thursday, February 26th. In the headlines, National Road Safety Council raises concern over spike in child road deaths. Primary school students to learn financial literacy from the Bank of Jamaica's Common Sense program. In business news, Bank of Jamaica says Jamaica to recover from Hurricane Melissa in 2 years. Regionally, Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Brown encouraged by the message delivered by U.S. Secretary of State. And in sports, Jamaica beat Turks and Caicos 7-0 in CONCACAF Under-20 qualifiers. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. The National Road Safety Council, NRSC, is concerned about a sharp increase in the number of children killed in motor vehicle crashes since the start of the year. Data from the Island Traffic Authority show that 7 children between ages 0 to 17 have died on the nation's roads since January 1. The fatalities include 3 children traveling in private motor cars, 2 on motorcycles, and 1 pedestrian, as well as 1 pedal cyclist. NRSC Vice Chairman Dr. Lucian Jones described the figures as deeply troubling, particularly against the backdrop of broader concerns about child safety. He noted that police reports cite excessive speeding and motorists failing to keep within their lanes as major contributing factors. The rise in child fatalities comes despite an overall 36% reduction in road deaths. As at February 25, 39 people have been killed in crashes, compared to 58 during the corresponding period last year. The Bank of Jamaica is set to launch a new online financial education game aimed at primary school students. The platform, called MoneyQuest, will roll out in April and target students in grades 4 to 6. The details in this report from Danita Rodney.
Speaking at the bank's quarterly monetary policy report press conference in downtown Kingston, head of the Financial Inclusion Unit, Dr. Andre Murray, said the game blends financial literacy with academic concepts and problem solving, all aligned with the primary exit profile syllabus.
It will blend financial knowledge, academic concepts, and problem solving with adventure, and make the learning of these financial concepts fun, memorable, and actually curriculum aligned. So importantly, the PEP syllabus was used to be incorporated in this game, so they won't just be wasting time playing the game. They'll actually be studying and using useful skills to pass the PEP and also build these life skills.
Dr. Murray says the initiative has already undergone beta testing in schools across the island and is designed to make learning interactive and engaging.
We've had beta testing with schools from around the country, and we're hoping that in the end we'll be able to launch this in April 2026. And so we're trying to leverage the power of play, help children to develop these habits, confidence, and financial skills that will serve them for life.
He says introducing financial education at the primary level will help shape a generation that sees money management as a life skill.
So MoneyQuest allows students to learn these financial concepts and academic concepts with problem solving, decision making, etc. But by introducing financial education at the primary level, we are helping to cultivate a generation of Jamaicans that understand money management as a life skill and not merely as a subject area. So can you imagine a Jamaica where every child grows up understanding money, not with fear, but with curiosity, with confidence, and with control? That this is the sort of generation that we want to build. And I actually believe that the best way to educate adults is to actually start with the children.
MoneyQuest forms part of the bank's wider push to strengthen financial capability and trust in the financial system.
So the broader vision is that these initiatives are part of a larger mission to strengthen financial capability, expand access, and build trust in our financial system. So when people understand money, they make better and stronger choices. When families thrive, the economy grows. And when citizens are confident, the nation actually becomes more resilient.
The game was developed by Database Technologies Limited. Reporting for the news on PBCJ, I am Danita Rodney.
Time now for our Reggae Month feature, Reggae Facts, with Joan Andrea Hutchinson.
Reggae Facts. Reggae Sunsplash, first staged at Jarrett Park in Montego Bay from June 23 to 28, 1978, was Jamaica's first week-long international reggae festival. The brainchild of principals of Synergy Productions, Tony Johnson, Ronnie Burke, Don Green, and John Wakeling, the goal was to further popularize reggae and to use the festival as a platform to boost the Jamaican tourism product during the slow summer months. Promoted as the biggest reggae festival in the history of the world, it attracted Jamaicans at home and in the diaspora, as well as the wider global community of music lovers. The first Sunsplash featured performances by acts like Jimmy Cliff, Dennis Brown, Third World, Burning Spear, Toots and the Maytals, Inner Circle, Bob Andy, and the Heptones. Over the years, increased numbers of attendees resulted in a scramble for accommodation, spawning the practice of camping on local beaches during the festival and the selling of what we call reggae beds. Reggae Sunsplash started its series of international tours in 1985, taking Jamaican culture to countries such as Japan, the US, Canada, and across Europe. Reggae Sunsplash was a staple of the music and tourism industries until 1996 and influenced the birth of many other local and global music festivals.
Reggae Facts was brought to you with the kind support of the Jamaica Association of Composers, Authors and Publishers, JCAP, valuing your musical creativity.
Denise Williams joins us with the Business Report.
Welcome to today's Business Report. I'm Denise Williams, bringing you the developments shaping markets, capital access, and business decision-making across Jamaica and the region. Let's get into the stories that matter. The Bank of Jamaica is anticipating a full recovery in economic activity after Hurricane Melissa within 2 to 3 years. BOJ Governor Richard Biles says this is faster than the previous estimate of 3 to 4 years. And I quote, "This improved recovery outlook anticipates a faster rebound in agricultural activity and factors in a faster than initially anticipated recovery in electricity and telecommunication services," he said. Biles was addressing the bank's quarterly monetary policy report press conference at the BOJ Auditorium in downtown Kingston on Tuesday, February 24. He noted that for fiscal year 2025-26, the bank is expecting a decline in real gross domestic product in the range of 1 to 3%. I quote, "This is a smaller contraction than our previous estimate. As the economy recovers, real GDP growth for financial year 2026-27 is projected in the range of 1 to 3%, end quote. Meanwhile, Biles said Jamaica's current account balance is expected to deteriorate in the medium term. He explained that this is primarily due to the hurricane's adverse impact on the tourism industry, coupled with increased imports required for infrastructure rebuilding and relief supplies. Notwithstanding the deterioration in the balance of payment current account, the central bank governor noted that Jamaica's international reserves remain robust, reaching a historic high of US $6.8 billion as of February 19, 2026. This represents approximately 155.8% of the benchmark considered adequate. Central Bank Governor Richard Biles says the Bank of Jamaica does not expect the government's new $18 billion tax package to significantly push inflation above its target. Mr. Biles explained on Tuesday that the bank's inflation forecast does not yet include the impact of new taxes, but he believes their overall effect on prices will be limited. He noted that inflation could turn out lower than projected if higher prices reduce consumer spending. At the same time, he warned that inflation could rise if bad weather affects agriculture. The new taxes on sugary drinks, alcohol, cigarettes, and the environmental levy are expected to raise the price of several food and beverage items. For the trading period of February 24, 2026, the most actively traded securities were Trans-Jamaican Highway Limited with 4,683,730 units, or 13.5% of market sales activities. Dollar Financial Services Limited Jamaican dollar shares with 3,334,960 units, representing 9.61% of market sales activities. Phosrich Company Limited shares with 2,885,472 units, representing 8.31% of market sales activities. Investor activity remained concentrated in transportation, financial, and distribution plays, signaling continued interest in dividend-producing and strategic assets. Turning to the foreign exchange market, based on Bank of Jamaica data for February 24, 2026, Forex traders recorded significant activity with strong demand across major currencies. The US dollar had trading margins reflected steady liquidity, with the US selling at $157.04 and buying at $155. For the Canadian dollar, moderate gains supported by 39-cent transaction spreads. The Canadian dollar sold for $114.71 and was bought for $114.32. For the British pound, continued volatility offered short-term trading opportunities, $5.53 in profits for the banks. The British pound sold for $214.80 and was bought for $209.27. These movements underscore the importance of cash flow timing and currency awareness for business managing input costs, debt servicing, or overseas exposure. For the credit report tip of the day, when you sit down with a banker to discuss financing a fleet of vehicles, your credit report should be part of the conversation, not just something they pull behind the scenes. Before the meeting, review your credit report and be ready to walk through it confidently. Point out your track record of on-time payments, how you've managed existing loans, and the stability of your credit over time. Then connect that directly to your business plan. Explain how the vehicles will generate revenue, how the projected income covers the loan payments, and how your past credit behavior demonstrates that you manage debt responsibly. When meeting with financial institutions, bankers are looking for that alignment. Your credit history showing discipline and your fleet plan showing clear, reliable cash flow. When both pieces support each other, the discussion shifts from simply asking for a loan to presenting a well-structured business opportunity. In our Funded and Focused feature, when seeking funding as a one-person business, the advent of artificial technology has changed the game. Solopreneurs can use AI to create digital products such as courses, toolkits, guides, or templates that can be sold repeatedly. AI accelerates research, content creation, and design, allowing products to be built faster and updated more frequently. Platforms like Canva enable AI-assisted design for presentations, workbooks, and visual frameworks, while tools like Notion support the development of structured knowledge systems and digital resources that can evolve into paid products or subscription libraries. And that's today's business report. I'm Denise Williams, bringing clarity to capital markets and strategy. Until next time, stay informed, stay intentional, and keep building forward. See you soon.
In regional news, CARICOM-US relations took center stage on Wednesday at the CARICOM Heads of Government meeting with the arrival of America's top diplomat. U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio met collectively with regional leaders and later held individual discussions with several of them in St. Kitts and Nevis. CBC News' Crystal Hoyt was there, and she shared the latest.
U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio arrived here at the Marriott Hotel just after midday. He joined regional leaders for a brief address that lasted less than 20 minutes. His message focused on the growing threat posed by transnational criminal organizations. Rubio described narco-trafficking networks as the most urgent security challenge facing the region, warning that some groups now possess financial and military capacity rivaling that of small states. He acknowledged that firearms flowing from the United States have contributed to regional instability and said U.S. law enforcement agencies are working to curb weapons trafficking.
Thanks, Crystal. Did the U.S. Secretary of State comment at all on the Venezuela situation?
Well, Aisha, Rubio said, and I quote, "Venezuela is better off today than it was 8 weeks ago," end quote. He addressed Venezuela's political transition following the capturing of former President Nicolas Maduro. He said the interim authorities have taken steps, including releasing political prisoners and reopening diplomatic channels, but stressed that legitimate democratic elections will be necessary for long-term stability. And while that brief initial meeting did not permit discussion, I can tell you that a high-level plenary discussion occurred just before 3 p.m. The closed-door session lasted around 90 minutes, and officials were tight-lipped afterwards. But Rubio's presence comes at a time of heightened regional debate over U.S. security engagement in the Caribbean, including radar installations and maritime interdiction operations in the Southern Caribbean. Now, he also had bilateral talks with the heads of government of Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, and St. Kitts and Nevis. Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago, Kamala Persad-Bissessar, spoke to us shortly after her meeting.
Today with him, we talked about Haiti, we talked about Cuba, of course, we talked about engagements with Venezuela and the way forward. And he committed that on the 7th when we meet President Trump, more details will be shared on several of the things that I raised with him today.
Now, while the Prime Minister didn't share any additional details on that meeting with President Trump, President of Guyana, Irfan Ali, has confirmed for CBC that he too was invited and will be attending the talks in Florida on March 7th.
Been some criticism about Prime Minister Persad-Bissessar's speech during the opening ceremony. Has she responded to that by any chance?
She has, and in fact, while she is adamant that it was not her intent to be divisive, she did double down on her remarks made at the opening session.
It hurts. I was very honest in what I was saying. I think sometimes we put our heads in the sand, bury our heads to what is the reality of the region at this time. And I said it last night, I say it again, who vex lost. And I don't mean it dismissively, but we have to do what we see best for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. That is my first duty. And of course, to work and cooperate with the region. So there was no intention to divide anyone, but I think we need to wake up. We can't do things 50 years later the same way.
When I questioned her on increased U.S. military operations in the Caribbean and if the deadly airstrikes over the last few months should be seen as extrajudicial killings, she only had this to say.
I don't think they are, and if they are, we will find out, but our legal advice is they are not.
Amor Maudsley is here engaging in talks with the other heads of government, and we expect to hear from her directly tomorrow.
Antigua and Barbuda's Prime Minister Gaston Brown says he is encouraged by the message delivered by United States Secretary of State Marco Rubio to CARICOM leaders at their ongoing 50th regular meeting in St. Kitts and Nevis. Fraught geopolitical developments in Haiti, Cuba, and Venezuela were among issues discussed as leaders engaged in an interactive caucus with the U.S. top diplomat. Samantha Simon reports.
Rubio addressed CARICOM heads of government during the 50th regular meeting of the conference, which is being held in Frigate Bay, St. Kitts, under the chairmanship of Prime Minister Dr. Terence Drew. The U.S. Secretary of State's engagement with regional leaders comes in the wake of major challenges in Haiti, Cuba, and Venezuela. There has also been significant focus on U.S.-Caribbean relations as President Trump takes a more assertive stance to hemispheric relations. Speaking ahead of a closed-door caucus between CARICOM heads and Rubio, Prime Minister Honorable Gaston Brown said the address, while brief, sent a clear signal.
It's a very positive message in terms of helping to secure the future of Caribbean countries, to work closely with the various Caribbean countries, recognizing the fact that we are linked by geography. We are linked by our people. The Caribbean has its largest diaspora in the United States. And we are also linked by our common humanity. And I sense that the statement that he made, though brief, would have signaled a level of commitment to enhance the relationship between the United States and CARICOM. So that is certainly very encouraging.
Prime Minister Brown acknowledged that there had been concern among regional leaders about what the message from Washington would be, but said Rubio's tone and content were reassuring. The Prime Minister said he expected more detailed discussions during the Heads Plus One session with Rubio later in the afternoon. The U.S. CARICOM engagement comes as regional leaders navigate a shifting geopolitical landscape, with several heads of government using their statements during the opening ceremony to call for principled and strategic partnerships with international allies. Samantha Simon, ABS News.
2 Mexican Navy vessels have set sail for Cuba carrying powdered milk, beans, and other essential supplies as Mexico steps up support amid a renewed U.S. push to curb oil shipments to the island. The move comes as the Trump administration threatens penalties against suppliers of crude oil to Cuba. Al Jazeera's Julia Galliano reports from Mexico.
2 Navy vessels carrying humanitarian aid to Cuba set sail from Mexico. The shipments are loaded with powdered milk, beans, and other non-perishable goods. A month into the White House campaign to force regime change by blocking crude oil from reaching the island, Mexico is emerging as Cuba's most reliable partner. The Trump administration is threatening to impose tariffs on anyone who supplies Cuba with fuel. But President Claudia Sheinbaum says her government is determined to stop a worsening humanitarian crisis on the island. Her government has halted oil shipments, but she says food and medical aid will continue, calling it a humanitarian obligation.
Let me make this clear. We do not agree with the imposition of tariffs on countries selling oil to Cuba, but we will continue helping the Cuban people in other ways.
She's even calling on the Mexican population to join the effort. Across the country, Mexicans have been dropping off food and other basic supplies at collection points.
Mexico is showing its solidarity, but we must not fool ourselves. It's a symbolic act and doesn't help the real problem on the island and its long-term solution.
The aid is also helping Mexico's president placate factions within her own party, ideologically aligned with Havana and uneasy about concessions she's made to Washington.
Mexico and Cuba's ties date back centuries. In fact, it was from here, the state of Veracruz, that in 1956, a boat carrying Fidel Castro and Che Guevara, then young aspiring revolutionaries, left for Cuba in what marked the beginning of the Cuban Revolution.
Mexico has played a balancing act since the revolution, maintaining close ties to Cuba without angering the United States. Now, with the Trump administration seeking to reassert its influence in the region, that balancing act is more delicate than ever. Julia Galliano, Al Jazeera, Veracruz, Mexico.
In sports, we get a football update. Jamaica beat Turks and Caicos Islands 7-0 in their CONCACAF Under-20 qualifiers this week. The Round 1 Group B game was played in Curacao on Wednesday. Raekwon Campbell-Dennis had scored in Monday's 3-0 win over Benin. Jamaica now has back-to-back clean sheets in CONCACAF Under-20 qualifying for the first time since 2024. We turn to cricket. West Indies women's captain Hayley Matthews' masterful century sealed a commanding 6-wicket victory over Sri Lanka women in the final CG United One-Day International at the National Cricket Stadium in Grenada to avoid a home whitewash. Sri Lanka took the series 2-1. Nasira Mohammed has the details.
Sri Lanka women won the toss and elected to bat first in the third and final CG United ODI at the National Cricket Stadium in Grenada. Despite losing captain Chamari Atapattu for a duck early on, Harshita Samara Vikrama's steady 70 and Kavisha Dilhari's unbeaten 45 helped the visitors post 217 for 7 from their 50 overs.
Don't buy West Indies, but all in all, Harshita was just too good. They ran really well between the wickets. Yeah, 50 in her 50th ODI.
Hayley Matthews and Karishma Ramharak had figures of 2 for 33 and 2 for 39 respectively.
Anywhere, it is straight to her. Sharp in Glasgow, who hope that she doesn't have much to do with the bat. Ashmini Munisar brought in today, replacing Shanisha Hector, got the important.
In reply, the West Indies lost both Kiana Joseph and Shemaine Campbell early on.
To win, got down behind the 8-ball, Kiana Joseph, and also Shemaine Campbell, finding himself 20.
But Matthews and Stefani Taylor turned the game around with a brilliant 124-run partnership for the third wicket.
The offside was being peppered on regular occasions by Hayley Matthews. Have a look at that.
During the stand, Taylor crossed 6,000 runs in women's ODI cricket, becoming the second highest run scorer in the format's history, behind India's Mithali Raj. Matthews then went on to score her 10th women's ODI century, a composed 100 of 119 deliveries, to bring her side to the brink of victory.
To gold. That was 100. Her 10th, her first versus Sri Lanka.
She has now scored a century against 8 different playing nations. Atapattu eventually removed her counterpart, but it was too little too late, as Deandra Dottin and Chanel Henry finished the job with 4 overs to spare. The teams will switch focus now to the T20 format. The first match is on Saturday, February 28th at the same venue. First ball is at 1 p.m. Eastern Caribbean time.
And that's the summary of the match. Windies winning by 6 runs.
And that's it for the news on PBCJ. Remember, you can follow us on our social media platforms at PBCJamaica. Thanks for watching.